Welcome to the Ideas on Stage podcast, your regular insight into leadership communication.
Helena, welcome to the show.
Hi, Andrea. Just great to be here.
Great to be here too, and I'm super excited to have this conversation with you today, Helena. Today we are going to talk about conversational intelligence. Very interesting topic, and I think I have to say it's also relatively new to me, and I guess it's also a new topic to most of the people who are listening to us today. So let's start with the basics. What are we talking about? What is conversational intelligence?
Okay, I guess I can spend 2 days talking about it, and that's only because I'm very enthusiastic. Can I start with a story?
Sure.
Yeah.
I love stories.
Good. So it's a personal story. I am a leadership coach. So when I work with executives and leaders, the first thing we do, we have like an intake conversation to see where they want to go, what they want to receive my support for. And very often what they say is, as a leader, I want to have more impact. I want to have more influence. And I guess as a leader, that's really what you need. But I always felt like there's something missing, because you can help people achieving more impact and more influence. But to me, it always meant that basically you have an opinion, you have an idea, you have a strategy, and you want to influence, so you want to convince the other people to go with you. And that's okay. There's nothing against that as a strategy. But I felt there was something missing, because especially in today's corporate life, in entrepreneurial life, we're all talking about engagement, about commitment. And if you try to convince people to go with you, where's that engagement? Because in a lot of situations, you convince people because you have like the authority, you're like their boss, their supervisor, or you have some kind of position that puts you into more power over them. So I was like, okay, I don't have anything against the concept of impact or influence, but sometimes it might not be enough, especially with the challenging times that we are all working in. So one day I received an email, by coincidence or not, and it was an email by Judith Glaser, and she is an academic expert from the US, and she developed this body of work of conversational intelligence. And we could have like this first webinar sort of thing to get into this idea, and I was like, this is it. This is really the missing part that I felt intuitively, but put into like a model, and that was conversational intelligence. So I started with this certification with a lot of energy and enthusiasm, and I have to say it's one of the best things that I've ever done. Why is that? Because based on the story I'm telling you about leaders and executives that want to have more impact, this is only a part of how you can use conversation and how you can build your relationships. What she does, if I can go a little bit into theory, is that okay for you, Andrea?
Sure, and then we'll see where that leads. Go ahead.
Okay, so in her model there are 3 levels of conversation. And the first level is what we call the transactional level, and that is about data and facts. So that means we have an agreement to have this interview. We say, okay, we will be there at 11 on Friday, and there's not a lot of negotiation or interaction. It's just exchange of information, okay, which we need. We need that type of conversation. The second one is what we call the positional. And that is about impact and influence. It is about, I have an opinion, you have an opinion, and we try to influence each other. And basically my aim is to convince you, and probably your aim will be to convince me. So that means that in the end, there's a big chance that I convince you, and that means that I win. And then you lose.
Or
Nobody
likewise.
likes to lose, or the other way around. So nobody likes that. I know that there are situations where this is the most effective way of conversating, but it's not really where we always want to be. Of course, if you are in a situation like, okay, I'm a mother and I decide what kind of meal I will put on the table in the evening, I can do this because I mean, I have to organize that and children follow. There are relationships and situations where this is the perfect strategy of conversation. But then there's the third one, and that's what we call the co-creative or the transformational level of conversation. And that means that you have an opinion and I have an opinion, but we have a common goal and we put our opinions or our visions aside and we look together how we can, like from a blank sheet of paper, how we can co-create a strategy or a mission or a philosophy or whatever in order to achieve that. And we will use our opinions and our expertise and whatever, but we will create something together and we will both win. And we will both feel completely different than in the other situation where we had to give in. Does that make sense, Andrea? Does that resonate to you?
It does make a lot of sense. And I would like to also explore in a little bit more detail something that you mentioned before. You started by saying that sometimes it's hard to convince people, to influence them. It may not be the thing that you want to do. And what I also find, Helena, is that often when we want to convince somebody of something, we often get some sort of resistance. Isn't that true? Especially when you want to communicate maybe new ideas or maybe ideas which could be a bit uncomfortable to hear. So why is it that often we get that resistance, and also how do we deal with it?
Okay. I'm trying to find a short answer to that. If you feel resistance, and first of all, we feel that with ourselves. Okay, somebody comes with an idea or a plan or something that we could or should do, and you feel resistance. Personally, I feel resistance when somebody would ask me to go skiing and go from like the black track. I would say, I won't do that. Or somebody asking me like, can you engage in a new project of mine, and it will involve like 3 hours daily between 9 o'clock in the evening and 12 o'clock in the evening, I will feel resistance. Okay, so this is basically something that keeps us from doing things that is not good for us. So let me go a little bit deeper into the concept of resistance, because it's really important to be aware of that in order to deal with that. There are 3 levels of resistance, and the first level of resistance is the cognitive one. It's the one of facts and data again. We can be resistant to an idea or a project because we do not understand it, or we do not have enough information, or the information is not complete. This type of resistance is a very easy one to deal with, because that means that if we give additional information, if I explain the concept to you again and you understand, then your resistance will be gone and you will come with me. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. It makes sense.
So if you look at it like that, it should be very, very easy to deal with resistance. And we all know that it's not like that. And there are reasons for that. That is because there are other levels of resistance that are not so visible. The second level of resistance is the resistance of emotion. It is the resistance of discomfort. You are asking me to do something and I am afraid that I won't be able to do that I don't have the capacities, or I don't have the expertise, or that I will have to change a lot of things in my environment, and that makes me feel uncomfortable, uncertain. There's an insecurity, there's stress. If I don't trust you, if I don't know you well enough, I will never tell you that. I will ask for more information. I will act like I don't understand what you do, or I will just disconnect and you will not know what is going on. So it's very important to be aware of that level of resistance, because that is the level that is occurring most of the time. When we are offering somebody a new role or new responsibilities, people, or new projects or a new way of working, people might resist, not because they do not understand it, but because they feel uncomfortable, because they have been working like this for 3 years, or they have been explaining this procedure to their customers or their stakeholders for a year, and now they have to go back and say something different. I don't know how to do that. I don't feel comfortable doing that. But I will not admit that, especially if I don't trust you. So if you want to deal with resistance, and especially with that level of resistance, it's very important that you build the trust and that you ask the right questions in order to understand where they are in their resistance. Because if you give additional information, this resistance will remain, and you will become frustrated because you will not understand how somebody with like a bachelor's degree or university degree doesn't understand this simple information. But that's not the situation.
Yeah. And Helena, was there another level of resistance, or was it two?
There's a third level of resistance. So the first one is I don't understand it. The second one is I don't like it. And the third one is I don't like you. And basically that's a translation for I don't trust you. For example, you come as a boss in an organization and you say, okay, we are going to restructure, or we are going to do a reorganization. I can have the feeling like, you know what, you did that last year and it didn't work. Who says that you will be there for us to guide us through this reorganization? So it's not like I don't like you in the terms of I don't want to go and drink a beer with you. It's about trust that you, as the change agent, that you will not be able to get me through that change, and that you will let me down. And of course, that's the most difficult level of resistance to build from. The thing is, if you don't discover level 1 or 2, you might end up in level 3. You see, so yeah. It's very important to keep the conversation open with people. And in level 1, transactional, level 2, positional conversation, it is mostly about you. You know, in our organizations as executives or as entrepreneurs, we have our deadlines, we have our goals, and we just need everybody else, or we want everybody else to help us or to join us to achieve that goal. But basically, we make it about us, or reputation, or credibility, or goal, or bonus. So there's no us there. And of course, then you create resistance because other people are asking, what's in there for us?
Yeah, Elena, this is very interesting because I'm trying to connect the dots with my area of expertise, which is public speaking and presentation skills. And also when it comes to presentations, I always tell people, look, when you give a presentation, it's not about you, it's not your presentation, it's their presentation. It's all the audience's presentation. And I see that also from a conversational perspective, we are very much aligned there. And also, Helena, before you mentioned that one of the things you need to do is to, instead of providing sometimes more information, you need to maybe ask questions to better understand where they are at. And to me, that's connected to, but please tell me what you think, to also the idea of listening, because you ask questions and then you need to listen. And when it comes to, we are talking about having better conversations today, which is a communication thing, right? We're talking about communicating effectively today. And often I think that we forget that when it comes to communicating, there is another element which is super important, which is listening. What's your take on this? What do you think about the role of listening and the power of listening for effective communication?
I couldn't agree more, Andrea. I believe that conversation or dialogue is a lot more than just talking. And it might be a little bit more difficult to apply that to public speaking, but it is certainly applicable to other ways of being with the public, like facilitation, and especially in meetings, corporate meetings, or individual conversations, both professional and privately. We do not listen enough. And if we listen, mostly we are listening to find arguments or elements that can prove our right. We are back in the positional level of conversation. The real listening is the curiosity, is going away from what you know and is just being open and connecting with the other person and really feel what is going on there instead of already being judgmental. Because when we listen, we judge. We're wired like that. There's nothing wrong with that, but be aware of that. That when we listen, we start judging, we start categorizing, and we start building our own arguments to go back. Yes. So be aware that active listening and that listening to connect is a different way of listening. And it's putting aside everything that you have in the periphery. It's always there, but it is really connecting with the person, asking the questions for which you don't have answers. Might seem strange, but we do ask a lot of questions just to direct or redirect or prove again, prove or right. But asking the open question for which we don't have answers, you will have a completely different energy because the connection will be there.
Yeah, and it's so hard, isn't it? This idea of active listening. I've been reading a book recently. I have it there, I think, Coactive Coaching. And
I know
it's
the book.
Yeah, everything you are talking about today is very much connected to what I've learned in that book. One of the things, of course, they talk about, you mentioned co-creation, which is one level of communication. They talk about, that's the idea behind a coactive approach to coaching, and also the power of listening at a higher level, really listening, not just thinking about what you need to say next, but really actively listening to what the other person is saying. And also, Helena, one of the things I like very much about conversational intelligence and the approach that you follow is that, but please correct me if I'm wrong, in my understanding, it's very much grounded on neuroscience. And for me, that's great because also, again, in my area, when it comes to presentation skills, I strongly believe that a presentation, for example, is a mix of art and science. And so everything that has a very strong link to what science tells us about what's working and what's not is really interesting to me. So is my understanding correct that there is a lot of neuroscience basis for this?
Absolutely. The evolution of neuroscience the last 2-3 decades has been enormous and has been very, very rewarding for a lot of theories and models for conversational intelligence. It has been based on neuroscience, and if I may, I would like to go a little bit deeper into that.
Sure.
We all know that we have different brains. Basically, there's 6, and that's a trigger because I won't go into all 6 of them, but there are 2 that are very, very important in conversations and in real life in general. So the first brain that I would like to mention is our reptile brain. That's our basic brain here behind. It's our oldest brain. It's our survival brain. It's the brain that is constantly scanning the world for risk and danger, and that is constantly alerting us for risk and danger. And it's very good that we have it, because if we didn't have it, we wouldn't have survived, because it's the brain that when you ages ago, when you were walking in nature and you were encountering a bear, your reptile brain would be activated. And we have 4 reactions in our reptile brain. So the reptile brain very, very quickly would say, okay, are we stronger than the bear? Then you're going to fight. Can we run faster than the bear? Then we are going to flight. We are going to run. If we stay still, maybe the bear won't see us and won't eat us. Or maybe we can pace and we can just start negotiating with the bear and telling him that he might not be so very hungry, so he would leave us alone. So basically, in our reptile brain, when something occurs that brings our life in danger, we either fight, flight, appease, or paralyze. Very, very useful when you encounter a bear. The thing is that a lot of people are in that reptile brain for most of their time. Well, there are no bears, there are no saber-tooth tigers, there are no life-threatening situations, or reptile brain is activated by anything, by somebody who is cutting us off in traffic, by somebody who is giving us a remark that we don't really like, by a mad email that is coming in, or a reptile brain is activated and we fight, we flight, we disconnect, we paralyze. Those things are happening all the time, okay? You know that this is not good. I know that this is not good. And everybody who listens knows that this is not the way we should do, but this is the way we are wired. And if we are not aware of this, we don't act. The thing is that if our reptile brain is activated, we also produce cortisol and adrenaline. And those are hormones that are in our body. And if we produce cortisol all the time, then bad things happen to us. I mean, it's said that like burnout is caused for part by the overproduction of cortisol. So when you are in a meeting, when you are in a conversation and somebody feels threatened, somebody is resistant, they start activating. They don't start it because it would mean it's a choice. The reptile brain is just activated and they go in defense or they go in attack or they, in any way, they go in resistance. So it's very important to be aware of that. And most important is to be aware that we sometimes, with what we say, how we say it, we activate the reptile brain with other people. So it's important to be aware of how we show up. Okay.
And Helena, before you go on with the other type of brain, let me just again make a connection with public speaking, because again, this is so connected. The reptile brain gets activated also often when we are in front of an audience, whether it's face-to-face or online, because you're right. Of course, the brain has evolved over millions of years, but still, we still have that reptile brain that gets activated. And for a brain, believe it or not, it is very hard to differentiate between a bear attacking us and somebody staring at us when we speak in public. And that's why we have the same flight or fight response. And so I just wanted to make the link with,
exactly.
and that's where fear of public speaking comes from most of the time, from the reptile brain being activated. Sorry to interrupt, please go ahead.
No, I like that. And I think indeed what the link that you make is very, very good, because you have to be aware of the way we show up in order not to activate the reptile brains of other people. But of course, we also have to be aware that our own brain can be activated and how that comes or what the triggers are. Because if we feel that coming, there are, and you know that, and I guess that you have a lot of tips around that. There's a lot of ways that we can calm our reptile brain. And the most important one is breathing. It is so accessible and so helpful, because when we become aware of this this event that our reptile brain will be activated, we can start breathing very slowly. And by doing that, we are giving, physiologically, we are giving a sign to our brain like, it's okay. You don't need to be activated. There's no life-threatening situation. Because when we are in this state, and you know that also in public speaking, but also in a meeting or in whatever conversation, when your reptile brain is activated, because of those hormones, something in your body happens. It's like, so your muscles start to, I don't know how to say that in English, but because you're getting ready either to fight or to fly. And you can feel that. And by doing that, just try it in the moment, just try that. And you will feel that you will start breathing with the top of your lungs only. So you will breathing very short and fast. And so this is all keeping the state of your reptile brain, of stress, basically. Well, if you start breathing,
it's true.
Your muscles relax and you're calmer. So it's so accessible, but I guess you already have sessions about that for your public speaking audience as well, but it's very accessible. So be aware of this stress thing coming up and then just take 5. And if you can, go outside for 2 minutes, or just change your posture, take a cup of coffee, get up and do something.
100% true. 100% true, because what happens in those situations is that we have a lot of excess energy flowing throughout our body, and what we need to do is we need to get that energy out. And one great thing we can do is to breathe in and out slowly. Another thing, as you rightly mentioned, is to move. Movement helps us get the energy out. And Helena, did you want to continue with another type of brain? Or...
Yes, of course, of course. The second one I wanted to highlight in this specific context of conversational intelligence and relationships in general is our prefrontal cortex. That's our newest brain that is in the front of it's the executive brain. It's in the front of our head. A lot of things happen there. And basically in this brain, we have access to options, to creativity, to trust. We are able to nuance, not to take things that heavily. We are able to build our relationships there. So this is basically a very, very important brain in terms of conversational intelligence. And if we activate that brain, then we also produce oxytocin. And let's not go too deep into the chemicals here, but you know this feeling when you have this great conversation or this great meeting, and it just puts a smile on your face, yeah. and you leave the meeting room, or you leave that conversation and you go outside and you feel happy,
energized,
and oh, this was great. And time, oh, where's the time? It's so late already. We had this great. That's oxytocin produced in your body, and that's what we want. And we can make sure that this happens during meetings because of the way we have a conversation, because of the way we are listening, because of the way we are focusing on people, and we build a trust. We can produce our oxytocin. Isn't that amazing? I mean, it's not something that is randomly happening. We can actively contribute to that.
How can we do that, Helena, in practice? Do you have any tips, any maybe simple ways for us to be able to do that? And of course, then as a consequence, to amplify the quality of our conversations?
Absolutely. The first one I would like to bring to you is prime for trust. If we have an important conversation or a difficult conversation, what really helps is that when we prepare for that and when we invite the other people that will be in that conversation, if we already make clear that we have positive intentions, and if we already inform them about what we would like to achieve or what the project would like to be about, okay? If you enter an office, or if you enter a room and you say, I want to have a conversation with you, can we sit back for 5 minutes in the meeting room? People will say, what's going on? Especially if it's your boss. Yeah. What's going on? So your stress levels will go up. You will be in your reptile brain and you will go there like, oh gosh. Well, if you enter an office and you say, hey, Mike, we have this issue with this client over there, and I would really like to have your input on how we are going to solve this. Could we sit down like 5 minutes in the meeting room next door so we can find a solution for this? Okay, then I know that your intentions are like finding a solution. So the tone, the nonverbal communication, the words I use are already priming for trust, because Mike will say, okay, I'm invited into that meeting room in order to find a solution for our client. Yeah. Does that make sense? So that's priming for trust. It is, and you can do that via email, you can do that in person. It's about being transparent about your intentions.
I love that, priming for trust. Yeah. Is there anything else that comes to mind in terms of any other tips or any other techniques or ways to have better conversations?
Absolutely. Another one that I just love is double clicking. You know, when you
Actually, Elena, I wanted to ask you about double clicking because it's something that I saw. I think you wrote an article about it, maybe on LinkedIn or on your blog. And I
Yeah.
don't know that technique, so I wanted to ask you. So that's perfect timing. Tell us about double
Okay.
click.
Andrea, it is so simple. It's just imagine that that you are on a website and you are reading like the homepage, and then there's something that you need more information about, and exactly that word is highlighted and underlined, and you can click onto that and you come in another page and you see all the information. The thing is, when we have conversations, we assume a lot. We think we know, we think we understand, we feel that we are, empathic, and we know what the other person means. We don't. Trust me, we don't. So if you double click, then you are showing curiosity, then you are showing interest in what people are saying, or you are showing that you are not sure that you really understand what they say. So double clicking is about, Andrea, you were saying this. Can you explain a little bit more about that? What does that exactly mean? Or can you give me some context there so I'm sure I understand what you mean? It is going away from the assuming, it's going deeper into what the other person says. And that means focus, connection, and time. Because sometimes in meetings we want to go quick. We only have an hour, and then somebody says something, and we feel we understand, and we go further on that. And then at the end of the meeting, something different happens, something else happens than we expected because we thought we knew. So take more time in your meetings. Take more time for your conversations, and double click, double click. It's not like a CIA, like why, and that's not what we mean. It's about being intentional, curious in a healthy way, and find out more about what the other person means, or what other people mean in that conversation. That's the double clicking. So it's very simple. We just don't do it.
I love that. Okay, so we talked about priming for trust, double clicking. You don't have to have another tip for us, but in case you do, can you think of anything else?
Well, asking the questions for which you have no answers is another tip. It is about being open for whatever emerges. Ask open questions and go deeper and explore more options. That is also a very good tip to get people involved and to get them in their prefrontal cortex and co-create oxytocin, but especially, of course, co-create solutions and co-create strategies.
Yeah.
And the last one I would like to bring is reframing. We tend sometimes to put things very harsh or negative, and sometimes it helps to think of a different way of putting things, a different way of looking at things. And you can do that, you can do that for yourself, and you can also do that for other people. Try to reframe, try to use more positive or at least neutral words to put something on the table.
Can you help us understand this reframing idea in a bit more detail, like in practice? If somebody wants to get better at reframing and using the approach, what do they need to do in a conversation?
In a conversation, it is important that they are able to leave the content of the conversation and go at the process level. That might be difficult, but just imagine you are sitting at a table with 4 people and you are having a conversation. What is happening is that you are into that conversation. You are emotionally involved in some way. Whatever brain you're in, you will be in some way emotionally involved. Try to go to the ceiling. Like, try to have a look at what is going on there during that meeting. How are people talking? Is everybody having the possibility to talk? Are people listening? That's the process of that conversation. It's not the content. It's not what is told. It is how this interaction between people is there. And if you are at that level, it's easier to reframe, because you can say, okay, I see that Christine is putting things very negatively because she's probably in this negative emotion, or she's scared, or she's concerned or anxious. I see that because I'm here. I'm like flying.
I can sense it.
Yeah, and I can fly. And what can I say, or how can I reframe what she is saying? Like, let me try to think of an example. Well, basically, the most famous example is like the glass is half empty, and you say the glass is half full. That's a reframing. It's a different way of looking at it. If people are complaining about the weather, or if people are complaining about, for example, all the limitations and restrictions that we have now because of COVID-19, you can reframe it and say, well, if we can stick to these restrictions, it will be a safer world for us, and we will end up with more freedom sooner. It's a different way than say, we can't fly anymore, we can't travel anymore. This is really, we can all, or if you say, we now have to have this negative CPR test in order to fly, you could say, well, we have the possibility to take a test, so we're sure that if we fly and if we connect with other people, we're safe and they're safe. It's a different way of putting the thing, and it's the same situation. So it changes the energy, it shifts the energy.
Understood. Understood. And also, Helena, again, from another practical perspective, do you have any, you work a lot with leaders on, among other things, on their ability to have better conversations and to lead better. I think one critical aspect here is our ability to, when we have conversations, to give feedback and to give it in the most effective way. So if you think about giving feedback, do you have any tips, any suggestions for us to be able to do that better, more effectively, in a more positive way?
Yes. Well, there are the models of giving feedback that probably a lot of people know, and that are very, they're on the internet. You just Google them, like the 7 tips to give feedback. So I won't go there. The thing with feedback is that in a professional context, what I often see is the manager or the supervisor having this feedback moment. It could be like a performance review, or it could be like in the moment. It is, again, about how they perceive things, how they have, what interpretation they have. It is mostly, again, it is about them. A feedback basically is a moment where somebody can learn. And it is about packaging it in a way that makes it easy for people to accept that. And sometimes people say feedback is a gift, and it is. I'm very happy with feedback. I prefer people telling me what I can change in my workshops or on my website, and people that say, oh, you did great, because I'm not learning from that. Because what I did, I already thought it was great. Otherwise, I wouldn't have put it in the world. But if people say, hey, this is how this is landing with me, then I learn. But of course, you have to make sure that people can accept that gift. If you put it from a place where you are harsh and where you are negative and where you are judgmental, people will go in resistance. Their reptile brain will be activated and they will disconnect. They will fight back.
Yeah.
So there again, the whole concept of conversational intelligence is a great tool also to bring into your feedback moments.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I can see how the two are connected. And also, Helena, in preparation for this, of course, I had a look at some of your content that you published on LinkedIn, on your blog, and there was an interesting article where you talk about creating, and this is, I guess, especially for certain organizations, how do you create a culture that that makes it easy to have difficult conversations? How do you create a culture that embraces difficult conversations? I would love to explore that with you, if that's okay. What's your view on this?
I believe, first of all, it is something that happens top down, not only top down, but it's very important that the leaders walk the talk, that they are transparent, that they are open for feedback, and that they give it in a constructive and non-judgmental way. Creating a culture of feedback is creating a culture of trust, because feedback is not one way. I mean, it's perfectly normal, of course, if a leader or a supervisor is giving feedback to team members, but ideally it should go the other way around as well, where team members can express how they perceive specific behavior or specific strategies or whatever from their supervisors. And you can only do that when there's trust, because if there's no trust, there's no transparency. People will be holding back information, people will be holding back how they feel, they will be saying yes and doing no, or saying no and doing yes. So it is about building trust.
Yeah.
And that's a very, I guess we can fill another
session. another episode, just on that. I can
Absolutely.
imagine. And maybe we'll do that one day. And Helena, we are approaching the conclusion of this conversation, and I wanted to ask you a couple of other things. First of all, and maybe it's too broad question, but let's see where it leads. Now, we've been talking about conversational intelligence. Now, at Ideas on Stage, our area of expertise is public speaking, presentation skills, let's say also leadership communication. Where do you think that there is a link, that there is a connection between what we've been talking about today and some of the elements that are connected to public speaking, for example? And if that's the case, where do you see the link?
I believe public speaking serves several objectives, but mainly it is about getting your audience on the wave of your vision or your mission or your project or whatever it is. I believe if public speaking is about giving information in one direction, then we can stick to the second level of conversations, the positional level. If you want to touch people, if you want to create change and transformation, I would advise you to go to the third level of conversation, which might be a bit difficult because public speaking mostly is like a one-way thing, but I do believe that there are so many opportunities to build a connection with your audience, to build trust with your audience, maybe to actively engage them and have them participating in what you're doing. And then people will go with you. And I know that public speaking, there's a lot of rules and laws and also probably a lot of requirements by the organizer of those events. But I would say that taking it a little bit away from the one direction thing that I often see when I am, attending events. Think about what speakers that you remember, the ones that touched you, the ones that made you feel good, the ones that did some things that was not expected. That's my very personal opinion, but maybe that can work for some in your audience.
Yeah, no, we share the same opinion. I agree with you, Helena. The best presentations are really conversations. It doesn't have to be a talk, a presentation doesn't have to be a one-way communication. It can definitely be more of a conversation or closer to what we would classify as a conversation. And also, Another thing I liked very much about what you said is you used a word which I love, which is transformation. We always tell people, when you give a presentation, your objective is not just to share some information. It could be, I'm not saying that that cannot be your objective, but if that's your only objective, then if we think about it, there is no need to give a presentation. Give them a document, give them a coffee, give them some time so that they can drink their coffee and read that document, exactly. And then you share some ideas, much more effective. A presentation, as you said, Helena, is an opportunity to create some sort of transformation. It's an opportunity to change your audience in terms of what they believe, what they feel, what they do as a result of your presentation. So great connection there. And to wrap up, Helena, another thing that I like very, very much about your approach and what you do and how you do it is that you often talk about purpose, leading with purpose, living with purpose. And that's super important also for me, for us at Ideas on Stage. We are big advocates of, for example, for us, when I say purpose, what it means for us is that we love the idea of business as a force for good. We love, for example, working with purpose-driven entrepreneurs, those who have a vision, a mission that goes beyond just making money. Yeah. And that's our idea of purpose. And I just wanted to understand a little bit more about your idea of purpose. Would you like to explore that in a little bit more detail with us?
Absolutely. To me, purpose is essential, be it for businesses, for organizations, for governments, and for individuals. And my contribution there is at the individual level mainly. What I experience is that people who are not clear about their purpose, and additionally who are not clear about their values, or who are disconnected with that, will have a lot more stress, because there will be a lot more difficulty in making a decision or in choosing things. I work with leaders a lot on purpose because I call it their true north. If they are really clear about their purpose, if they can explicit it for themselves and for other people, it's really boosting their confidence and their self-confidence. And whatever happens in their lives, and whatever choice they have to make, whatever decision they have to take, it makes it a lot easier, because you can always say, does this opportunity or does this situation contribute to my purpose? If it's no, how nice it might be, I will not go there. Because we all have limited resources in time, in budget, in focus, and whatever. If it is, even if it's difficult or hard, if it is contributing to my purpose, then I say yes. So your choices and your decisions are a lot easier. Trust me, this is really, it's so obvious. So purpose is very important at all levels. I'm a big advocate of exploring and having your purpose clear.
Yeah. That's great. And Helena, if you could, maybe last couple of questions. We've been talking about conversational intelligence. Now, if you could, and take your time to think about it, or maybe you have an answer straight away, but if you could pick one book for those who are really interested in this topic, those who want to get better in this area when it comes to conversational intelligence and everything we've been talking about today, which book would you choose?
Well, in this context, I would certainly choose the book of Judith F. Glaser, Conversational Intelligence. It says it all. I mean, I know you cannot learn tennis from reading a book about tennis. But still, what it will do is it will give you the awareness of where you can start and what you can do. And then it is about finding a good coach, finding a good mentor, and try, experiment, experience, and keep doing that. And please, if you do, just spread it. It is a ripple effect, and that's my personal mission. It is really contributing to a better world, because words change relationships, and relationships that are amplified where there's trust can create a better world. And that's what it is all about in the end. So voila, that's basically the book that I would like to advise in this context.
Thank you. No, that's great. And Helena, thank you very much again. I really enjoyed this conversation. Before we close, is there anything else? You don't have to, but do you have a final message that you would like to share with our listeners? Is there maybe a question that you wanted me to ask and I didn't do it? Anything else you'd like to share with us?
I think we have covered a lot, and it might be like a bizarre conclusion, but if you think of it, you probably will understand why I say that. My final advice or my final word would be breathe.
And we stop it there, yeah?
Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Helena, thank you so much again. As I said, I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope our listeners have enjoyed it too. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. I wish you all the very best for your future projects, and let's keep in touch.
Thank you so much, Andrea. I wish you all the same, and also for your audience, I wish you a lot of good conversations in the future. So take care. Bye.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Ideas on Stage podcast, there are many more you might like, so please subscribe, leave us a review, and tell us what you think. You can find many more ideas on business communication at ideasonstage.com, or by searching for Ideas on Stage on iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and goodbye for now.